We're just continuing to wait for the building committee to finish up so that we get the rest of our members here.
Sarah, we just hopped on from another meeting, but I can't tell if you haven't started sound yet or if I messed something up. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep, we were just waiting
Okay.
for everybody.
No, I totally get it. I didn't know if I had done something.
Nope, you're all good. Emily, are you in yet? All right. I'll let Lisa. Thank you for your patience, everyone. I will call us to order at 7:04. All right, we will get started and move straight to commendations. Does anyone have any commendations this evening? I will start. We were at the Marblehead Chamber of Commerce gathering the other day, and our own Magic Hat got the nonprofit award of the year, I believe it was, from the Marblehead Chamber of Commerce for all the work that they do for the school. So I wanted to recognize them here as well for that. Anybody else? Sarah?
I just wanted to belatedly acknowledge, last week, I believe it was school. So I'm going to say this incorrectly, and I apologize for that too. School, it's not psychology. You know the word I'm looking for, Sarah, my
Adjustment counselor or psychologist?
It might be the psychologist. It was School Psychologist National Appreciation Day. And then today or yesterday was support staff. So I just want to acknowledge and thank all those people for everything they do to make sure that our kids are okay and have the support they need. Because quite honestly, those two groups probably, are some of the biggest supporters of our kids, checking to make sure they're okay and greeting them as they come and go. And then once they're in the building and in their classrooms, keeping them on track. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank those people.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, anybody else?
I did. I had one other shout out as well that came from the Chamber of Commerce event. I wanted to recognize building committee member and former school committee member, Jackie Belf-Becker, that was recognized as the Joseph Moulton Citizen of the Year. So congratulations, Jackie, and well-deserved. And thank you for your service to the building committee and to the town over the last 5 years and 20 years, I think it is in total.
Thank you, David. All right, I will move us along to our student representative update from Yasin Cologne. Welcome, Yasin.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, so I have not given one of these in a while, so a lot has happened. On November 3rd, everyone took a youth health survey or a youth risk behavior survey during one of our magic blocks, which is our designated time on Wednesday for either activities that we want to do that teachers run for us, or if we have something else to do like this, we'll do them. So hopefully that will give us some good data about the health of our students. We celebrated National French Week from November 3rd to November 9th. We had a fun Eiffel Tower building contest, and we had fun facts each day. That was pretty cool. The Booster Bash was held at the Dolphin Yacht Club on November 6th. Boosters supports all athletics at MHS and also provides scholarships to graduating seniors. The Marblehead Mental Health Task Force held a panel discussion about community mental health concerns in the setting of the COVID-19 pandemic on November 8th at MHS. The freshmen had a presentation on acceptable social media use on November 9th, but grades 10 through 12 will also have this presentation sometime in the future. The sophomore class and the National Green School Society, our environmental chapter, both had fundraisers. The service learning class helped out at the Council on Aging for a Veterans Day breakfast the day before Veterans Day, and the Marblehead High School mixed choir also sang at the Veterans Day ceremony at Abbott Hall on Veterans Day. November 12th was the end of the quarter. Yesterday, we had Dr. Henry Turner, who is a principal of Newton North High School and a Marblehead resident, give a presentation to all grades at MHS about standing up to racism. Next week is also Spirit Week. We'll have class colors on Monday, Tuesday is Pajama Day, Wednesday is School Spirit and Pep Rally, which students are looking forward to. And the class leadership will also be painting windows at MHS. Best Buddies is holding an event on Tuesday. They'll play knockout, dodgeball, etc. And Best Buddies, in case anyone was wondering, is an organization dedicated to ending the isolation of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So it's a really cool organization. Sing Free or Die Hard, which is Marblehead High School's annual November a cappella concert, is on Tuesday, November 23rd at 7 at MHS. Tickets are free for students and staff. NGSS is holding a clothing swap before and after the a cappella concert as well. There is, as I mentioned, a pep rally this Wednesday, November 24th on that half day. I know everyone's looking forward to it, and Thanksgiving break in general. For sports, boys cross country finished second in the Division 1C state championship race. So congratulations to them. It's a big accomplishment. Our last home football game of the season was November 12th. Marblehead beat Masco. Everyone is super pumped for Powder Puff this Saturday, November 20th at Marblehead High School at 10 a.m. They've been having Spirit Weeks all week, and everyone just seems super excited for it. So good luck to the girls. And juniors also received Powder Puff clothes today for next year. The boys football team also has their semifinals playoff game this Saturday in Shrewsbury at 3, and they will be playing Westfield. And if they win this, they will go off to Gillette Stadium. So that's pretty cool as well. And I wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Lavender, who ran rock climbing in gym these past couple weeks, and that was really cool because I never thought that I would get to rock climb at school. So that was pretty cool.
Great. That was a great update. Thank you, Yasin. And I will just give a little shout out to the choir with you as one of the members. I was in attendance at the Veterans Day event, and I was absolutely blown away with how good you guys are. I was so impressed. Really can't say it enough. So
thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you for that update. And I appreciate that you mentioned the mental health task force as well, because that also was a really great presentation. And there's a Marblehead Cares website, I believe it is, and that presentation can be viewed on there too for anyone who's interested. So I'd recommend that too. So thank you so much, Yasin. Always appreciate your update.
Of course. See you next time.
See you next time. All right, that brings us to public comment. If anyone would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand function, and I will use that to call on you. If you're going to be making public comment, we will keep you to a 3-minute time length, and please remember to state your full name and address for the record. All right, I'm not seeing anybody raise their hand, so I will continue to move us forward. We'll move on to our consent action and agenda items. Up first, we have an approval to declare veterans library books as surplus. We were all given a memo from Principal Fox. I noticed that you are here, Mr. Fox, so if you would like to fill us in, I would be very appreciative.
Yeah, we've spent the last probably 3, maybe now 4 years, sort of culling down our book collections and going through outdated books and books that don't apply to our curriculum or just books that are falling apart. And so we've done this, I think we've been here at the school committee 3 or 4 times now, just to request, every year that we can find these books as surplus. We've given them to different charities, the ones in the past. This year, if this is approved, I think we're looking at the Real Project, which is in Lynn, which promotes literacy from pre-K through adult and ESL learners too. So we're not just sort of throwing the books in the back dumpster. So.
Great, thank you. And it looks like from your memo that you would like us to make 2 motions this evening. One to declare the current around 150 books that you've got as surplus, but then how I saw it was another motion to allow you to declare books surplus when they meet the musty requirements or the musty criteria for the remainder of the school year.
So last year when we reorganized the library, I think you were in it, we went to the long lab tables and things like that. We ended up pulling a lot of books out of the library and putting them in storage. And so our outstanding librarian, Elizabeth Hvac, been working on bringing them back in. So she's not, what you see now is sort of a representative sample of about 150 titles she has so far. And as we keep bringing more books back in, there might be more that sort of meet this unusability in our school really, and they just take space up at this point. So that's why we're sort of thinking ahead that if we can, again, just for this school year, if you sort of trust what we've got and the approach that we're taking this, that we can just keep doing that as we find these books that are no longer used on our campus.
Great. So I will ask for 2 motions. We'll go through them one at a time. So can I get a motion to allow the Marblehead Veterans Middle School to declare the roughly 150 identified books as surplus?
So moved.
Megan moved.
Seconded.
Sarah second. Any questions on that one? Megan?
So thanks for the information, Matt. I appreciate this, and obviously totally trust you and your staff to kind of do what's right for the library. The only question I had is just clarification really on the must-tie piece where it says the material is easily obtainable from another library. Is that another library in our district or somewhere else? How does that work?
Yeah, so the musty is when it's talking about easily attainable from another library or something like that. That means that we don't really use it. It hasn't been checked out. But if somebody wanted to, like the Abbott Hall might have a copy of it, or through interlibrary loan, or even through Overdrive, which is our online book service. So this, books that fall into that category in this classification, it's because we haven't had any use on them. No checkouts, no borrow, no teacher that uses it or anything like that. So it's like, well, if someone really wants it, we could get it for them. And so that's that piece that, any book that falls in that category, which is probably the lowest of the numbers, that we're looking at, then it's not been used, it's just taking up space at that point.
All right, thank you.
Sarah?
And I just want to clarify for anybody listening that hasn't heard us go through these surplus things. A lot of this is when there's damage in something, even if it's like completely broken computer, it takes a vote of the school committee to get rid of it. You can't just get rid of it. So it's not that we're reworking what our library content is and making any big shifts. This is stuff that is unusable or hasn't been used in a long time.
And this is part of a process. I'll just say, I'll toot Elizabeth's horn real quick. This is part of a process to genreify our library. So now as students walk in, they can see books genreified by color-coded bar caps. So that as they walk in, they see a certain color. They know that that's the type of book, that's mystery and this, or this is fantasy and this is science fiction or things like that. So she's put in a lot of effort into, making our library really attainable by middle school students.
Sounds awesome, Matt. We'll have to come over there and have a look.
All right, thanks, Matt. So I will do a roll call vote. Sarah Gold, yes. Megan Taylor?
Yes.
Sarah Fox?
Yes.
David Harris?
Yes.
Emily Barron?
Yes.
All right, that passes 5-0. So now I will ask for a second motion to allow the Marblehead Veterans Middle School to declare books surplus when they meet the musty criteria for the remainder of the 2021-2022 school year.
So moved.
Megan moved.
Seconded.
Sarah second. Any questions about that one? All right, Sarah Gold, yes. Megan Taylor,
Yes.
Sarah Fox,
Yes.
David Harris,
Yes.
Emily Barron.
Yes.
All right, that passes 5-0 as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fox.
Thanks,
And
Matt.
thank you to the librarian as well for all that hard work. All right, so that moves us along to the facilities memorandum of agreement. Can you mute yourself, David?
Sorry.
So we have this in our packet last time. We talked a little bit about it. This was the work that Megan and I did with Jackie Belf-Becker to sort of formalize the ability for what we've sort of put forward as our facility subcommittee to work with a subcommittee or designated person from the Board of Selectmen to really start to look at the available land that we have, like all of our land, what makes sense for the schools, what makes sense for the town, so that we're really kind of working in tandem together as we've completed our big projects, but obviously don't want to make any moves that would be that would disadvantage us in the future. So, did anybody have anything else to add on that? Any concerns or anything?
No, do we need to take a vote to say who our representatives will be of that, or is it just that it's going to be the facilities liaison?
If you want me to include that in the motion, I can do that.
Yeah, whatever moves it quicker.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'm not seeing any other questions, so I will ask for a motion to approve the facilities memorandum of agreement with the Board of Selectmen and designate the facilities subcommittee representatives as the point people for that MOA.
So moved.
Megan moved.
Second.
Emily second. All right. I will call roll call vote. Sarah Gold, yes. Megan Taylor,
Yes.
Sarah Fox,
Yes.
David Harris. Can you unmute?
Yes.
Sorry. Emily Barron.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, everyone. That passes 5-0. John, that will turn it over to you for superintendent report.
Thanks, sir. I put a memo in over outlining things that I would talk about, and I'll probably move through this fairly quickly and then take questions at the end. First up is the vaccination clinics. We have been able to sponsor 3. The Board of Health did one on Tuesday of this week. This afternoon, Flag Pharmacy did a vaccination clinic that I went over at 3:45. It was to start at 4, and I think there were already 75 people in line. So that was a very successful clinic. And then Jason Silva and I, working with Deanna McMahon, got the mobile vaccination clinic, and it's a typo on my memo. That will be December 2nd, that the mobile vaccination, and that will be an evening. But then when they come for the second shot, that will be our half day before we recess for the holiday vacation. And so they'll be able to do an afternoon session for the second shot. So gotten a lot of positive feedback from the community that we've made so many opportunities available for vaccination.
Your memo is correct as well. It says December 2nd.
Thank you, Lisa, for sneaking in there and doing that. Budget season is well underway. We hosted 2 listening sessions yesterday. I would venture to say the in-person session was more successful. The Zoom session was a little awkward, I think would be the best word to describe it last night. But there were a lot of good things brought up, input, everything from considering playground equipment and what PTOs have funded and moving that into the operating budget. And so I felt really good about providing that opportunity for people to provide input as I'm drafting priorities for the budget and as I'm drafting the calendar. And hopefully before the next budget subcommittee meeting, which I believe is scheduled for Monday evening at 6 o'clock, which will be a joint meeting with town, that I will get out to the committee draft priorities and draft budget, but I wanted to have those listening sessions with the community before drafting the priorities, because I think that their input will significantly shape what the priorities are. Certainly we know what some of them are, but their input plays a big part of that. Michelle and I begun meeting with principals and directors. And again, the budget directive to them is, what do you need to effectively run your building in order to provide an exemplary education? And those are the parameters, or kind of the rails. And we have met with 3 out of the 5 principals and with the directors, and we're trying to make sure that they're coordinating with one another. So if they have a large technology request, and one of our principals does, that they're coordinating with Stephen so that we know what best budget to have that presented. And same thing with Nan and curriculum. If there are curriculum pieces, STEAM has come up in some of the listening sessions. And so we're trying to coordinate so that you're not getting duplicate requests and it is being put forward through the best principal or director. And then the facilities audit and capital requests. I think there's a facility subcommittee meeting coming up where we will prioritize what those capital requests are based on the facilities audit. Just a reminder to everyone on the calendar, because we did have that nor'easter day that bumped us the last day of school. We'll now incorporate that Juneteenth holiday, which is the Monday. So Tuesday, June 21st will be our last day, and June 22nd will be the last day for staff. And I will probably say that at every school committee meeting between now and then, because we don't know if we'll have another snow day or calamity day. Enrollment, which is a big driver of the budget. I just want to keep that at the forefront of everyone's thinking. We are under the enrollment that we had kind of forecasted last year in the budget, and our current enrollment is 2,611 in district students. That's not incorporating our out of district placements. So right now we have 2,611 that show up in district every day. Evolus program with Park and Rec, there was a memo from Michelle. We've been working with Rec and Park for them to use the Evolus school for some programming, which I think is a wonderful. I was in an HPP meeting with town last week, and the building inspector's buildings are not meant to be sheltered or to be non-operational. So when Jamie came and said, do you think we could do some programming at Evolus? I said, that sounds like an exceptional idea. And again, we have an MOU with them. And so Todd, Michelle, Jamie, Peter James, we've been talking about the logistics of that: lighting, heating, cleaning, snow removal. So that's all in the memo that Michelle has put together. New superintendent coffee date. I will be doing one at the high school in December. That'll be the 20th at 8:30. And just a shout out for the superintendent's thankful list. I think last I looked, we had 175 people who had responded. And that's such a nice thing on that Wednesday, on the half day, for people to be able to look through and see, oh my gosh, somebody's thankful for me or my program or the activity that I do. And so there've been some really thoughtful submissions, and I'll put that in my update tomorrow as well. So those are the superintendent updates, and I'm happy for questions.
Thanks, John. Sarah, I see your hand up.
Yes. So I had a couple of questions. So the vaccine, how do we pay for that? Does the federal and state government just automatically pay for that? They do. Okay.
It is of no cost to the district.
Yeah, that was my sense, but I just wanted to see. And then enrollment, as we look to next year and, trying to get those numbers in as soon as possible. Several years ago, it used to be that you had to enroll your kindergartner in February to even get a screening date, and the screening date would be in April. So we would have those enrollment numbers pretty early on, which would help our budget. It would help also for planning class sizes and things like that. That shifted 4 years ago. Sarah, I can't remember if our kids did where it was, but it shifted in the last few years. I try to remember by which child it did.
My youngest definitely was screened at the very beginning of the school year.
Okay,
So-
so it switched right before them. But to the point that the way we used to do that really forced parents, in order to get that kindergarten screening done, which is, mandatory in April, our old registrar wouldn't even let you book an appointment until you proved you had your child registered in the school system. And that had to be done in January and February. And it really helped to nail down those enrollment numbers. People that come in late in August, that still happened, but to a much, much lesser frequency. And I think that will help us with budgeting and staffing. If when we look at the calendar, we look at doing that as well.
Okay, I'm happy to bring that up with the leadership team because I'm sure that there are people that have been here for both iterations of that and how it worked in the past. And if that's something that we would want to go back to. Thanks.
Megan?
Beat you to it, Emily. Thanks for the update, John. On the vaccinations, that December 2nd session, how many vaccines are we going to have available to us? Do you know off the top of your head?
I think in the application, Jason put 500, but since that time, I have heard that they can only guarantee at any vaccination site 300.
Okay.
So
that's
there
still
will
a
be
good number.
certainly substantive number.
Okay. All right. That's great. And this isn't technically around vaccinations, but in terms of our COVID support, are we still getting support from the state, from that CIC group? Are they still,
We do. Yep.
Okay. All right.
That's helping with the pool testing.
Okay. All right. Great. On the budget piece, it's not really a question, I guess, but I just want to echo what John said, because I think the feedback we got, I did attend the morning session, and I think we got really valuable feedback from the members of the community and the parents who attended. So, I just do want to thank everybody who came to those and, was open to having, a really thoughtful conversation around the needs of our schools and our students and staff. So I thought that was I'm really glad we did those sessions. So thank you for organizing those. Also, just for the committee's information, I know John sent through our budget calendar kind of going up until the end of this calendar year, but since we are meeting with the town next week, I'm expecting that we'll be making some modifications to that. Nothing that I don't think anything that will affect this committee, but we'll solidify some dates for the next 2 months, I guess, with the town. So we'll update that and get it out to you on Tuesday, so you've got that for informational purposes. And then I guess, John, the only other thing I would say is on the Evelith agreement. I think this is another example of working, having a really great working relationship with other departments in town. So I'm glad, that we're going to see Evelith utilized. The only thing I would ask for you is that if there are any changes to the agreement, just as you kind of like nail down the final pieces, and even once you kind of get it up and running, if you could just bring that back to the committee just for our own information.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
John, do you need a vote on that or not yet? Is that premature?
No, I was talking to Michelle about that, and we don't ever bring facilities use like when the YMCA uses it or the JCC. Although they are not technically renting it, they're using the facility. It does not require a vote of the school committee.
Okay.
I saw this as different than the library conversation that we'll have later on, because the library will need the facility for a specific amount of time, so that we can't do anything else with that facility. And they're going to be, I believe they're going to be proposing changes to it. So that was where it sort of flipped from operational into school committee, kind of agreement. Emily, sorry.
So let me look at my notes here. Okay, so first with the vaccination, John and I met for our weekly meeting, and I got to see the vaccination clinic. So thank you so much for getting all those organized. And there were so many people there. It was great to see. We even heard some kid crying because he didn't want to get a shot. But yeah, so that was really encouraging. Also the Evelith use with Park and Rec. I remember Todd Bloodgood said an empty building is a sad building, and we really need to keep our buildings used, because otherwise they kind of just fall apart. So I think that's a great program that's going to happen. And I think that was it. Thank you.
Great.
Through the chair.
Yes, absolutely.
I am remiss in not recognizing 4 of our school nurses that helped with today's vaccination clinic. They certainly went above and beyond and were there for, and I think it's helpful for children to see familiar faces. And I recognize that person. So I really want to give a shout out to the school nurses who were there this afternoon.
Yes, the head of it was so thankful that they helped. He came over as we were leaving and thanked us. So, or thanked John, not me.
Yeah, I think that was a really great piece to this clinic, because I think, vaccinating kids is a lot different than vaccinating even the 12 and up age group. So I think it probably really helped to be able to see some familiar faces, and simply also to have people there who work with kids every single day, because that is a skill. So I'm really happy that you were able to work that out, John. Thank you. And thank you to the nurses.
One more piece in enrollment, John. I know last year at one point you put it an email or a survey out to families that had left the district to see if they were going to come back. I do still think that there's quite a bit of those people that stayed private because so much was a moving target. People just didn't know what school was going to look like this year. And people who really needed that child, I don't want to say childcare piece, but that was a driver, that all day school every day, just weren't willing to make that leap. Where things have really evened out, I think that it might be important to gauge those people so we can plan accordingly, because we may see a larger return in the coming year as well, I would anticipate.
We have the means and the ability to do that. I just asked Katie Farrell this week to get me a list of anyone that has left the district since July 1st. And so we have that list, and we could backtrack that to maybe July 1st the previous year and send a survey out targeted to those families. If they're, some people have moved out of state and are clearly not coming back, but there might be some that are at local private or parochial schools or charter or some other place that might be considering coming back. So we can do that.
Yeah, and I think backing that up to 2020 is actually a great idea, because I think we will see a bit of that.
Happy to do it.
All right. Anybody else? Okay.
Plus,
so
we have a beautiful new school that is always a draw.
Okay, that moves us along to our finance portion. So we do have a.
Pardon me, through the chair. I think I was supposed to give a sustainability update.
Go right ahead.
that group, and I forgot it on my memo. That group has reconvened, and it had members. I think it started under Bill McCulduff, but we're looking at expanding the composting program, and certainly has members of Sustainable, I almost said Nantucket, Sustainable Marblehead on that group. They were very appreciative of our move away from polystyrene in our cups and trays, and so that's a group that will be meeting. Megan was part of the meeting. Is there anything that I'm forgetting, since I totally spaced on putting it on my update?
It's okay. So when Bill put that group together, it was to really look at composting and recycling within the schools. And I don't know if you guys remember, but we were just about to kick off a pilot at Vets in Village for composting in the cafeterias right when COVID, kind of shut us all down. So now that we're in a more stable place with the pandemic, we got that group back together and really looking to see if we could pick up where we left off, at least on the composting and the recycling in the cafeteria. And the NGSS group at the high school is amazing, and they were already on their way to do that, which is great. So they're working with vets for sure, and then we've talked about some other area. How else we can roll that out throughout the district, and they've got a lot of great ideas, a lot of energy. So that is great. Well, I think we're meeting again in January, so we'll come back to this committee then, and really what we asked the group together to do is if we could put a timeline for, kind of what we plan to do and when, so that we can make sure that everyone's aware of what we're working towards. So it's a really great group, so much energy, everyone's excited about it. So it, comes second to my village SAC.
Great, thank you. Okay, now I will move us along to our schedule of bills. The invoices were in our packet, so I will ask for a motion to approve the identified schedule of bills totaling $2,364,620.59.
So moved.
Sarah moved.
Second.
Megan second. Bless you, David. Any questions on that? All right, I will call for a roll call vote. Sarah Gold, yes. Sarah Fox,
Yes.
Megan Taylor,
Yes.
David Harris,
Yes.
Emily Barron.
Yes.
All right, thanks everyone. That passes 5-0. All right, that now leads us on to our Abbott Library presentation. Is Kimberly on yet? I had told her to come
Hi,
around.
it's Nancy
Hi,
Arad.
Nancy.
I'm chairman of the board of the trustees. I know she's racing to get here. She was
Yes.
also finishing a town meeting with Jason on the boot camp.
Yep.
So she was hoping to be here between 7:30 and 7:45. So I would
Yes.
expect her momentarily.
We're a smidge early, so I will move us out of order, and so we'll just continue to click off some of our own business, and
Okay,
then when
perfect.
Kimberly gets here, we will shoot back over to you guys.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Mm-hmm. All right. I would like to go to actually item C, the school children's bill, H926 resolution discussion. I'll save the policies. So I will tee this one up. Someone had reached out, I believe someone reached out to Chip Osborne, and then Chip reached to David, and then David sent it my way. So a woman named Rosemary Malfi, she works with the policy department at the Northeast Organic Farming Association, a Massachusetts chapter. And she is working with Representative Gentile. There is another, let's see, and Senator Becca Rausch, and Representative Dykema too, it looks like, on a bill to support state level pesticide reform legislation. So what we have is a resolution that's been passed by a few other school committees. I believe Cambridge, Somerville, and Brookline are amongst them. I apologize, I meant to get on and send this email to everybody before, because it's got a few links in it as to who has passed it and the full statement about what this bill is about. So Massachusetts law still permits schools and childcare centers to use toxic pesticides, even though research shows that children are especially vulnerable to toxins. So this includes the weed killers, glyphosate, and 2,4-D, which are suspected endocrine disruptors and carcinogens. So in 2012, the American Academy of Pediatrics called for governments to reduce children's exposure to pesticides, stating that scientific evidence demonstrates associations between early life exposure to pesticides and pediatric cancers, decreased cognitive function, and behavioral problems. So Massachusetts, or Marblehead, is a leader in this. We do a lot through Chip Osborne. There's a lot of very green ways in which we take care of our green spaces. So I believe that was one of the big reasons why Rosemary reached out to us to see if we would be interested in supporting this resolution that would then be sent on to our own representatives from Congress, as well as the representatives that were named who have been working on this, and the governor. So I don't know if you guys want to take action on this evening or read it through. Rosemary did offer to come to meetings, so I can ask her to come to our first meeting in December if people want to speak to her more on this. Or if you're ready to act at this point, I will, answer any questions as best I can, or we can move to, or just, put it on the next agenda and get more into it at that point.
Sarah, I just want to ask for clarification. The I'm butchering this, glyphosate, whatever,
Yep.
is Roundup, right?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that
I
question.
believe it's what the common brand name of Roundup is. But if we could get some, because I just want to know what we're voting on, because I personally, without like I'm not opposed to voting for this at all. I want to know that I'm thinking it is what it is, if you know what I mean.
Yep. Megan?
You know what I'm gonna say. I think this one is kind of a no-brainer, right? Like, I know that Todd's team is very conscientious about the products he uses, and I think we all support not using pesticides in general, and especially around our children. The one thing I would say, though, just in terms of what I've been pushing this whole year, is to just make sure that we kind of slow our things down, make sure that we have time to really read through and digest the material, especially for, putting our name and sending it to the State House. So like Sarah, I will vote on this if that's the will of the committee, but I think just for future, I'd rather just, make sure that we have the chance to really digest the information, have a valid conversation about it, get the materials we need before we bring it to a vote.
I can absolutely do that. And when I send along that email to you guys, Rosemary's email is on there and she is quite responsive. So if that makes more sense to just have a few questions emailed to her to clarify anything. And then if anybody does that, just to report back to the committee. But if anybody also wants me to have her come to the meeting, just let me know and I will schedule her for that as well. Emily, did you have your hand up?
Just real quick, do we know if we use, maybe this is something we should find out, if we use any of these products here in Marblehead now?
So in the past, there was an issue with poison ivy. I know that. And it went through the Board of Health and several different people weighed in. Because it was one of our school properties that was, the playground was covered in poison ivy. And the Board of Health weighed in, and because we have at the town level some rulings against use of pesticides from our health department. And I just Googled it quickly that glyphosate is what's commonly known as Roundup. And I know at the time, even though we have the pesticide ban in town, that didn't fall under it. That was in the quote unquote safe category. I'm not saying whether I think it's safe. It was in the safe category as far as our town ban went. So at that point, we did use it because it was, there were kids all over the school covered head to toe in poison ivy. They tried multiple other options and it was deemed to be the only thing that was going to solve the problem. So we have used it. I know as recently as like 2.5, 3 years ago. It's not something we use as maintenance per se, but in an extreme situation, it was allowed by our town ordinance.
Michelle, you're absolutely allowed
Thank
to
you.
speak.
I just wanted to jump in real quick. Anytime we use pesticides, there is a particular protocol. We're not allowed just to use them because we want to use them for maintenance or whatnot. There is a protocol that we have to notify the state. We also have to notify parents in advance. And usually it's a situation where it's like a 48-hour advance notice and whatnot, notification, and we need to make that widespread. So it's not something we would use on a regular basis. And if we were, the whole community would absolutely hear about that.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, so it seems like everybody would like to push this to the next meeting, which is completely fine. I will email or forward the email to you. And if anybody wants to have Rosemary come, just let me know.
And then Sarah, I'm assuming we just copied and pasted this from as it came in, but whoever sent it to us, there's a lot of things to tweak and typos. If we can just have Lisa look over that before we put pen to paper with our names.
Sure. Are you looking at the one that does not have signatures? Because there's two in our Dropbox, one that didn't have signatures, which probably is the original. And And then,
No, the one with signatures.
okay, yep,
Yeah.
we'll look that over again. Absolutely. All right. I did not see Kimberly come in through the weight room, so we will continue to talk about our other stuff. So I did have school committee meeting locations and outreach on here. So the outreach piece, I wanted to circle back on from a conversation I believe we had over the summer at our retreat about the possibility of doing school committee coffees, much like John's superintendent coffees. You know, this idea is not a new one that we've bantered about with. And so, Sarah, you had expressed concern that two of us, you know, we'd kind of proposed two of us would meet, knowing that we can't make any decisions, that this would be really about listening and imparting any kind of factual information that we were capable of doing. So I finally remembered to email the AG's office, and they got back to me and said that, you know, the way that I had stated it, it did not appear that, you know, that it was going to be any kind of open meeting issue. If it was two of us, that's not a quorum. And, you know, that we could report back to the committee in an open meeting as to, you know, how the attendance went, any conversation that was had, any discussion items. And so I wanted to bring that back to the committee to discuss if we wanted to move forward on that. I think, you know, probably waiting till the new calendar year would be a good idea. It's probably a lot to think about adding it in December, but, you know, we can have the conversation and we can think about it and come back at the next meeting, however you guys would like. Sarah?
I think the more that we're accessible to the community, the better. I'm not opposed to that as long as we're, you know, within the confines of the rules. You know, I think the more people can access us, the better.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we can figure out how to, in my head, we can figure out how to hold some of them in a morning situation, some of them in maybe a later afternoon, evening situation, so that not only the members of the committee can all participate, but that the members of the public, you know, if they're working and it doesn't work, or they've got kids in the morning and they would prefer later on, that, you know, kind of giving equal access would be great. So it sounds like everybody's for that, so we can kind of move forward. So maybe I'll work to sort of put together a little bit of a schedule. I'll talk with John maybe about what makes sense in building use and that, and where we should hold these, and come back with a little bit more concrete plan at one of our December meetings. And we can look to start scheduling those in the new year. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about the possibility of moving our meetings in person. I did attend the MASC-MASS conference a couple weeks ago, and one of the sessions I attended, I can't remember exactly what the title of it was, but the conversation ensued of to kind of what was going on, who was doing what, and it was a well-attended session, and so there were quite a few various school committees there, and they did a raise of hands at one point to kind of talk about who's meeting fully in person, who's meeting fully remote still, and who's doing hybrid. So we would be considered sort of hybrid. And by far the largest contingent was in person. Then the next was fully remote. And then there was just a few that were running hybrid. And many had run hybrid and talked about their move to in person because the hybrid situation is much more difficult, you know, sort of to run the meeting and to feel like you're sort of a grounded committee in that. So I would, and again, we can talk about this. I also wanted to put it on this agenda because I think for community outreach, that's a big piece. The way I've been talking with Stephen about this possibility for a while, the way I see it going is that we would move back into the library so that MHTV would have access to the meetings. And then we would also continue to live stream the meetings. So the public participation piece, as far as public comment, would need to go on in person, but everything else about the meeting would be accessible regardless of cable provider. So, you know, I can, Stephen and I have been working on that a bit. We would need to kind of nuts and bolts work it out. But I think, again, sort of at some point, maybe in the new year, we look to do that.
Can we get, is there a way for us to kind of get some feedback from the community on, I know that this is hard to manage. I totally understand that piece of it. But I also know that we've gotten a lot of positive feedback about our accessibility as far as people being able to view it, to stream it, to public comment, even if they can't physically get to a meeting. Where our population is parents, I think, this is definitely more accessible to parents. Is there a way to still maximize that accessibility point, yet also maximize the management point? And what is the answer to that? And I'd like to know, what is the community's appetite for still being able to access, being able to participate in a meeting via public comment remotely? There may not be an interest. There may. I just don't have a true sense of that, and I would like to have a sense of it.
So I think in thinking about doing this, we'd probably send a communication out to the community as well from the school committee. So, we can look to do that. I don't know how to do that on the new system, but I can obviously work with Stephen on that and sort of, again, get that word out well before we choose to do this.
I am totally for meeting in person in a normal situation because this is not great for everyone, I don't think, at least us as a committee, because of the headphones, the microphones. We're looking at a screen when we should be looking at each other because we are a committee. We should be engaging with each other that way. So whatever we can do to get us all together without this, a mask on, but without everything else would be great.
Megan?
So I take Sarah's point. I think the accessibility is important. I think the fact that we can still continue to stream it over YouTube means that anybody can watch it both, live in person or live or, after the fact, which I think is a huge increase in accessibility than we've ever had before. So I think that's great. But I also agree with Emily. I think we have to begin to take steps to get to a more normal sense of working together where we can. And I think we saw, this isn't the only example, but with the listening sessions that we did, it was so much more effective in person, where we can all, look at each other, have a conversation. And so I just think we have to really start to take steps to get back to that type of environment.
All right, so I'll work on some community outreach for that, and we can sort of think about it as the holidays go through, and sort of try to pick a date as to what makes the most sense as we move into the new year.
Sarah.
Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Just for clarification, we're not thinking of making this move before the end of this calendar year, correct?
No.
Okay.
No. I'm thinking at some point in January, probably. That's what's in my head. David?
We were also working with Steve to see about the accessibility of the new Brown School to hold meetings, right? Okay.
Yes, the piece with that is MHTV. So we'd have to work with them as well, but I definitely think that we can toggle back and forth a little bit.
All right. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right. I know that the library is here now, so we will go back to them. Kimberly, I am going to allow you to be able to share. Okay. That should do it. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. This has been a long time in coming. Poor Kimberly sort of got pushed off a few times with other agenda items. So I'm appreciative that you've been so patient with us and that you're here this evening. So I will turn it over to you to take it away.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you for having us here tonight. This is a very big moment. We are the Abbott Public Library, our Board of Trustees, Nancy Arata, Yarim Chun, Gary Amberg, Anne McGreevy, David Ross, and John Williams. Our Building and Renovation Committee is Gary Amberg, Tom Ansler, Nancy Arata, Ken Fisher, myself, Jason Silva, and John Williams. So tonight, I am just going to go through a couple of things to sort of orient you as to where we are with this request to use the Coffin School as an interim space while we undergo the much awaited renovation to bring our library into the 21st century. So I'll talk a little bit about the priorities of the library, a little bit about our history with some fun photos, a renovation timeline. I'll introduce you to our library staff and services, and then we'll go into a little bit more information about why we think the Coffin School might be just right for us at this time. We'll go into a list of some of the things that might need to happen to make it work for us, and then we can take some questions. I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me okay. Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up. Great, thank you. Okay, so priorities and core values. Literacy and the love of learning is, of course, at the top of the list, but all of these pieces are important to our work. Continuing education, community partnerships, promotion of arts and culture, providing a free and safe gathering space for everyone, and to support digital and information literacy, to provide outreach and programming to the Marblehead schools, historic and community organizations, and to, again, remember that everyone is welcome at the library. The library got its start. Oh, it looks like I had a little formatting issue here, so bear with me. Anyway, the library got its start in 1877 at Abbott Hall. It was there for quite a few years. The lending service started in 1878, and actually what you're seeing here in the photo is one of the first policies that was created, and it's very similar to what we do today. I think they said if you didn't return your book, they'd come and get it from you because they knew where you went. But I don't think we do that anymore. Definitely not. So in 1923, the Children's Department was added, and the Dewey Decimal System was implemented. And as we go into the 30s, the town population increases and the demands on the library increases. So a couple of branches were created. So just found some wonderful photos just to give you a little bit of a walk back in history. You can see here in some of the photos, they're actually packing up the library and getting it ready to go to the new space, which took place in the 1950s. Again, apologies for the formatting here. Oops. Oh. So 1953, 1954, that's when we start getting into the newer building. And here's what it looked like. Quite spiffy in this mid-century modern look. And if you look into this room, see if I can point it out. If you look into this room, you can see a teeny little bit of the fireplace over here. And that's to just give you an idea of what this is and how it's oriented. So in 1977, the library celebrates its 100th anniversary. We begin to see the Friends group forming, and we join something called NOBLE, which is the North of Boston Library Exchange, which is our we're still members of NOBLE, and they are our patron database and catalog holders. So we work with them on that and lots of other things. So in 1987, another expansion was approved, and you can see that work being done there in the lower photo. In 1990, the expansion was completed. So now coming into more recent history, 2013, the library renovation plans begin. This is the newest phase. And then we completed the children's room renovation in 2016. And then in 2017, up until this point, we've been working on the idea of really working on fundraising and renovation plans. So, and I just threw this last fact in here on the October, we actually hosted our first hybrid virtual and in-person program. So here's a timeline as to where we would like to be. As time marches on, these dates are in danger of slipping a little bit. So the sooner we can kind of make some plans, the sooner we can get back into the building. But ideally, we'd start our move in the summer of 2022. And then we would begin the renovation in the fall of 2022. And if all goes well, we'd be back in the building 12 months later in 2023. So now I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about why we need to move. Because we're doing a major renovation to the building infrastructure, this is HVAC, drains, lighting, reorganization of the one to move the building completely, while it ensures safety for the staff and public, and it enables the work to move more quickly and efficiently. So moving our entire operations to an interim space, excuse me, it means that we can continue to offer all of the services that we are known to have, and we might even be able to make some improvements along the way. So, excuse me a minute. So I wanted to say, so what are we bringing to this interim space? We will bring our staff, and here you can see some of the folks that I work with every day. We've got Morgan Yo, Lisa Taranto, and Kara Gallagher. Here's our librarian team with a couple of camera shy librarians, that's okay. We have Elena, Lauren, Marcia, Jan, and Lori. We have a very wonderful technical services staff with Amber, Amanda, Veronica, and Sage, and Sandy Sprague, who works with our social media and marketing and publicity. And then we have our wonderful circulation staff. So we have Jeremy, who's our circulation coordinator, Carol, Joan, Anna, Sage, Kira, David, and Joshua, and then Dick Leahy, who's our custodian. So the other thing that we are bringing with us to the interim space are all of our programs for early literacy, to school age, to teen, adult programs, reference and research, meeting room space if we can manage it. That's still a question mark. We'll have Wi-Fi, we'll have public computers, and interlibrary loan. Our order processing will continue, which means that we'll continue to purchase the bestsellers, the award-winning titles, the items of interest to Marblehead patrons. And we also, so we'll bring our print collection with us. We're in the middle of weeding it right now because we don't want to bring all of it with us, but you'll see everything that's familiar. And of course, our special collections will need to be addressed. This is anything from holiday books to Marblehead local history. Of course, our digital collections will come with us. This is our ebooks, audiobooks, magazines. That's our access through the Noble catalog. Now, Noble, as I mentioned, is also coming with us, and which means we have to look at our infrastructure of technology to make sure that we can accommodate our catalog and our patron database. Noble is a 25 member library group that it's an automated resource sharing network, and it's actually the glue that holds all of us together in this library world. So as I mentioned, we'd like to be able to do meeting rooms. I put this slide in here that kind of tells us what we do right now, but certainly our Museum Pass program will continue. If you haven't had a chance, please check it out. We are in the middle of establishing our Library of Things with Chromebooks, hotspots, and our book club sets, and that will also come with us. So in order to do all of this, we need space. We think that the conference school will offer a flexible amount of space for our staff, for our services, and also for storage, because we need to find a place to put the books. Not all of them will be out on display, but we'd like them to be easily accessible. One of the things that we think about in choosing a building is, will it hold the weight of the books? And we hope that the school, we would be able to put some shelving in the hallways to, like maybe on the first floor, to accommodate all of that. And the other thing that the school offers is parking, which is very important. So let me just go through some of the benefits that you should be aware of, some of the things that I've thought about. You may have some questions for me later. So all building improvements will be beneficial for future use. I know that the building is being considered for other uses, especially affordable housing. But while that's coming together, we could use the space, even if it's used for something else later, we would make some improvements to the space. So there's no cost to the school department for any upgrades that we would arrange. We can safely occupy this building that would otherwise be empty and unused in a busy residential area. The town will continue to carry insurance and liability on the building, whether it's empty or occupied. And we think there's no risk for the school committee in this exchange. The library, as I mentioned, would pay for all of the upgrades. So we think that using this building would actually save the town renovation dollars, since we won't be renting commercial space. And most important, I think the school committee should know, but that by making this decision, you're helping the library to provide continued service to the community during the renovation. Okay, so now I'm going to go through some of the things that will need to happen to make the space work for us. And one of them is accessibility. We would have to focus on some pretty serious ADA compliance, adding ramps and stairways to create access and mobility, not only for our book carts, but mostly for people to be able to move around the building. We would need to retrofit the public restrooms to accommodate wheelchair access. Now, it may not be necessary to do a full renovation, but we would want to do at least that. And then we have to be mindful of our entrances to make sure that wheelchairs can go through. There is some concern about the HVAC system or lack thereof at the school. So we would have to think about adding some stationary units to control humidity and temperature. So decisions about this may affect how we need to address the book storage. So technology, we need to evaluate the infrastructure to be sure that we can set up that connectivity with Noble. And because they manage our ILS system, which is the patron database and cataloging. We would need to look at the classroom areas to create reading rooms out of them. And we would set aside book and periodical collections in those classrooms. We would have separate children's and teen areas. In fact, we might even be able to utilize that existing children's library. We would not install permanent shelving, but it would be movable, which could help us if we wanted to use the space for programs and meetings as well. We may consider combining the classrooms for larger spaces, but of course, considering the structure and safety. And we would figure out the best place for a main level entrance. Maybe that's off of the parking lot. So the principal's office and the nurse's office is actually a pretty appealing space for administrative staff. I think we probably would have to select one of the classrooms for book processing and additional staff desks. And as I mentioned, if structurally sound, we would use the hallways for book processing and shelving and so on. We'd want to do some design and beautification. Perhaps that's just a coat of paint in some areas. Maybe we can engage some of our garden clubs to volunteer and help with landscaping. And then we might even consider adding a deck to the top of the blacktop play area near the lower level entrance, which could create outdoor programming space for playtime and story time. So this is the end of my slides. I'm sure you have some questions for me or feedback. So I'll stop talking now and I can stop sharing my screen too.
Great, thank you so much, Kimberly. Are there any questions for Kimberly? Sarah?
Do you have a sense of what the renovations will cost? I ask because once we tip over a certain threshold, as it pertains to the value of the building, we are required by law to bring the entire building up to code, which is more than I think any of us are willing to bite off. But I'll be honest, with the exception of that piece, I'm in full support of this.
Well, thank you. I do think we'd have to look at the numbers. I mean, the idea is that we spend just about enough to make it work, because we don't want to run through our entire interim space renovation budget, because we could use that money elsewhere too, especially in the main library. So I think we would really want to spend wisely and cautiously in putting these upgrades in. And I think that, you know, we can bring existing furniture with us. There's a lot of things that we can do to outfit the space to make it work for us. It's really going to be temporary, you know.
So my sense is we won't breach that threshold.
I hope so. I don't know what the threshold is.
It's somewhere between 20 and 30% of the whole overall value, which I doubt you would even come close to, but I just want to make sure we double check that.
Okay. So we'll have to put that in our notes to double check. Yeah.
Okay.
It's hard for me to get a sense of exactly what that would be, but I can tell you we don't want to spend our entire budget on renovating the space. So
what is your budget that you have right now for your transition space?
I would say it's approximately 500,000, maybe a little more.
Yeah, we should probably.
Well,
yeah.
I was just in the municipal boot camp meeting, and they mentioned that the Gary School sold for around 850,000 because it needed so much work. It wasn't given a very large sale number. That they didn't get many offers. They didn't get a very large offer on it. So I don't know if the Coffin School is in such disarray. I don't know about that.
I don't think so, seeing as how it could house children and the Gary could not.
Oh, okay.
Very recently,
okay.
Or it could educate children still.
Okay.
And it's on market value. Like what Gary sold for in reality was not necessarily related to its market, you know, assessment value. So I wouldn't use that. I think my senses were probably okay, but I would just want to confirm it.
Okay.
You know, I think maybe I'd like to just say a second. Maybe Gary, you might have a little bit of insight here because you did look at the numbers a bit.
Yeah, I can jump in quickly. In terms of construction improvements, we're in the $50,000 range. We're not talking about a significant investment.
We're nowhere close then.
Right. Yeah. So
that answers that. It's not. It's a non-issue.
Right. And some of the other costs, we had a budget for renting a space as well as improving that space and moving books back and forth from the library and back into the library. So that whole budget was around $300,000. So if we can avoid renting a space, that was a significant portion of that relocation budget. So again, that money will go towards the library, the new library, as opposed to going to renting a temporary space, which benefits the whole town.
That's wonderful. So that's I think was really the only hurdle for me.
Okay.
And that's cleared up.
Okay.
Hi, thanks Kimberly so much for the presentation, all the information. I especially loved all the pictures from the past, so I appreciate that. I think this is a really creative use of a building that otherwise might not be utilized for the coming year or two. So I thank you for considering it. Also, I guess one of the things that I think about in terms of that space is there is still a playground there that I know the community uses. So if you could just talk about how we could continue to make that accessible to the community.
Sure. I think it's a great opportunity to synergize some of the programs that we offer at the library. So maybe we would be offering literacy programs or outdoor craft programs. It would be part of what we do. And I think that would be wonderful if the community was still using the playground, because then I would like them to come into the library as well. And I think that's one of the ideas I had for that outdoor sort of platform area, to make that sort of like the meeting place where you could go and meet your friends and also play in the playground and get some books too.
Okay, great. The other question I had, and this is more just for my own information in terms of making those modifications, do you have a timeline for that? I mean, that would be done by the summer?
It has to be done before we can actually move anything over there. So that's why we are really hoping to kind of move forward, make some decisions, and then our architect and our owner's project manager, OP, are sort of in the get started on this to get us in there into the interim space.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Emily, your hand is up.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I fully support the library using Coffin. I was really excited when we got the original email a few months ago. It'll bring some life back into the site, into that area of town too, because I mean, I'm so used to seeing it, you know, with kids and the people there. So to have it used again is really exciting. And like I said before, an unused building is a sad building, and it's just going to keep kind of falling apart. So to get someone in there to use it and use it in such a great way is awesome. So thanks.
Thank you.
Sarah, do you have a motion prepared?
I do not, but I can make one up.
I'll make a motion to enter into an agreement with the Abbott Public Library to lend our space at Coffin for the interim space during their building project.
So Sarah's made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. I will just I just want to say one thing, people make themselves so not. Thanks. I will just say I did touch base with Jason on this a couple weeks ago. You know, as we sort of have entered into this MOA with the Board of Selectmen, and then you know, as Kimberly mentioned, there's the housing piece that we're all aware of. As Jason had come to talk to us a while back about it, and he assured me that these timelines didn't overlap. So there's, you know, there's nothing kind of in the works on the town side that, as we look at this building and work with the town, that they would conflict with anything. So everybody's got the green light.
There is one piece. I keep bringing us back to needing a home for our 18 to 22-year-old program. This also presents an opportunity possibly, because part of that program is, or a large part of that program is the life skills, and we had different storefront type of places so that these students could partake in things. So maybe this could lead to a larger discussion where some of our students maybe get to do some volunteer work or things like that. I don't know what opportunity there is, but where my long-term vision for, in an ideal world for Coffin, is that we can find a home for that program. It might be, we don't need to have that discussion prior to this vote, but it might be an opportunity for us to kind of benefit at all parties. And again, this keeps that space lived in. It makes us a community partner. It keeps that area alive in town. I don't see a negative to this, so I'm very excited.
All right, well, we've got a motion and it's seconded, so I will do a roll call vote. Yep.
Can we review the motion?
Sarah, can you restate it?
The motion was to enter into an agreement with the Abbott Public Library to provide the site of the Coffin building, or the Coffin building, for use of their transition space during their building project.
Right, and I would just add that I think, you know, Michelle can, Cresta can work through that process, just as we have with, you know, Park and Rec, to be using Evelith and everything that's related to insurance and all things that are appropriate and needed for this to move forward. And I'm totally in favor of it as well. It's an exciting idea, and glad to hear the presentation, Kimberly, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
I'm
right.
excited that the library may be the children's room because that space is really sweet at the Coffin School.
Okay, Sarah Gold, yes. Sarah Fox,
Yes.
Megan Taylor,
Yes.
David Harris,
Yes.
and Emily Barron.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. That passes 5-0. Thank you, everyone, and we'll be in touch on next steps and how to work out a formalized agreement.
I
Thank you
appreciate
so
that.
much.
Thank
Thank
you
Can't wait
so
to
much.
I can't wait to come check it out.
This is a
Good luck
very
on your building
exciting.
project.
Sorry, Sarah.
Good luck on your building project. It's as David can speak to. It's a really exciting time to kind of live through and work through one of these, and enjoy it.
I just want to say on behalf of the trustees, we are so appreciative of both Kimberly's presentation tonight, but also of the school board's enthusiasm, because I do think this is going to be a great win-win for everybody on this. Gary, do you have anything else you want to say before we?
No, I was going to say the new school is a tough act to follow, but we will do our best to do as great of a job as you all did. So thank you very much.
I want to
No
also
pressure,
introduce our.
No pressure, but David used to give updates set to music, so no pressure.
Okay, maybe I need to do a little dance.
We also have one of our trustees, John Williams, is here with us, and John and Gary and I, as Kimberly said earlier, on the Building Renovation Committee, along with Jason and a few other people. So, we have been working on this project for, I don't know, Gary, how long? 7 years for sure.
Yeah.
But it's been a long time. And we were very gratified that the town was so supportive in the override approval. And I think everybody is going to be, under Kimberly's leadership particularly, we're all going to be really pleased with what we've done by fall of 2023. I think so. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Very
Thank
exciting.
you.
Very good. Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
everyone. All right. So I will take us back then to the policies that we have on our agenda for this evening. They were presented at our previous meeting way back in October, and so they're up again this evening for a vote. There were some changes to some more run-of-the-mill policies, the social networking policy for staff, and then school volunteer policy, but then we also have the face covering policy. So any questions on any of those? Everybody good with the updates? So,
All right. Are we talking about all three of them?
yes.
Sorry, I zoned out for a quick second. I'm sorry.
I will focus us on the face coverings policy because I do
Okay.
want to have a more substantial
Okay.
conversation about that. So I will just kick it off. So the 80% allowing us to put in for the DESE approval to make masks optional is the language that we're working on and looking to accept this evening. So, everybody knows that we've been looking for the verifications on the 80% and that's been kind of a slow slog. I've been struggling with this for quite a few weeks as I've watched the numbers trickle in. I get it. And at the same time, I've become increasingly frustrated with the process because I feel as though, I've been talking with John since August about what is our off ramp? What do we do to kind of move everything forward again? And I felt like, at the end of the summer, we were in a little different position. And then DESE stepped in and, regardless of how people feel about that, here we are. And I guess I would like for us to push this process forward at this point. And so I would like to ask John to move forward in having our nurses work with the Board of Health to collect the data on how many kids we have vaccinated so that we have an accurate count of the percentage, because we do have to be able to verify that per student. And then I would like us to consider, I'll toss a day out, the Tuesday after MLK Day. I would like us to work towards that date as a time to have masks be optional in our high school and middle school. I think in my head, that 80% off ramp was a nice conservative number for vaccinations. We know that our town as a whole has a really high vaccination rate. And our school and our children in our schools have a really high vaccination rate. And I think there's increasing frustration over a smaller group of people who, for probably many reasons, are uncomfortable with the idea of masking, and so have sort of found an end around to kind of keep the process in the current process in place. I'm really conservative about masking, so I feel as though if I'm frustrated, that there's probably more people out there than just me who are looking to move this forward. And I guess the big question. So I've put out there my thoughts. My big question is, what do you guys think? And if not now, when? Emily, I see your hand.
So yes, I agree that we need to find the data, but I don't think we just stop at the high school and vets, because why not the other schools? Because it is any school that gets the 80%, they can unmask. And now that we have the younger kids being able to be unmasked, and we've provided so many opportunities, and you can get them now, and by that date, their vaccinations will have kicked in, they'll be fully vaccinated. I think we should push for all the schools to be able to unmask if they want to. Or people individually can have the choice to unmask, because hopefully our rates will be high enough at all the levels. But I think waiting till that date is good, because then it gets everyone to that point of fully vaccinated who want to be.
One of my pieces in thinking behind that date too is that it gets us out from the holidays as well. And we've got that 2 weeks where we're back in school.
Yep.
And we can really monitor our numbers. It also gives us, I think it's 3 school committee meetings in between today and then to continue to look at this. I would like Dr. Bucky to work with the administration to set some guardrails for us of what would cause us not to follow through on I believe it's the 18th.
Yeah.
And what would then, if we are able to follow through on the 18th, what would push us back into masks? I think everyone's hopeful that won't have to happen, but we want those parameters as well.
I was just gonna say that, but also when we think about the parameters, we should also think about each school individually, because the population numbers are different. So a higher percentage or number at the high school is not the same as the same number at like the elementary school, because the ratios are so different. So we have to really think it through on how we're going to figure that out.
Sarah.
So my question is, and it might just be clarification. Are you saying, like, so to get this DESI waiver, we need to produce documentation of the 80%. So I just want to make the public to know what we're saying, because I don't want people to kind of feel like we're not giving them what we promised. So what can we act without the DESI waiver? And if we act without the DESI waiver, are there legal or statutory ramifications, John?
We cannot act without the DESI waiver.
Okay, so this is
not.
all dependent on being able to verify 80% according to what they want for their verifications.
That is
Because
correct.
they have very specific needs for how to verify, I understand. So us being able to meet their verification and get the approval. And I haven't heard a lot of news about people not getting approval, so that's not necessarily a concern. It's more so that we have to meet their needs for verification. It's not just that 90 some odd percent. We all know what our town's percentage rate is, but we can't just give the DESI that. We have certain hoops. So I just want the public to know we have to have that information, which includes, getting your documentation and getting your vaccination cards in and all of that. Also, the date you gave, I just ran the numbers in my calendar, does bring us 6 weeks out past the last vaccination clinic, which will be held on December 2nd, because that will be another good marker. Anybody partaking in these public vaccination clinics should hit full or maximum impact from the vaccine. So that I'm happy to see those dates line up. But I just want it to be very, very clear. We're not saying we're promising the Tuesday after Martin Luther King, it's mask optional. We still need approval from DESE, and to get approval from DESE, we need the community to be a partner and get us the information we need.
So there are a couple of different ways to collect that information. So what I've asked John to do is to move forward with an additional way of having the nurses work with the Board of Health to verify that students that are vaccinated. And so they do have that ability to work with the Board of Health and actually verify individuals. And I asked also, please don't stop at 80%. I would really appreciate knowing a much more specific and exact percentage of what is our vaccination rate at the high school, what is our vaccination rate at the middle school, and then so forth. And I do think it's really, really important to note that how this mandate is laid out, at least through what DESE has set for, is that what they've said is actually January 15th when they'll look at it again, is that once a school can prove 80% or more are vaccinated, then the superintendent is allowed to submit for that waiver. They then will approve it or not approve it. Assuming it's approved, then it gets kicked to the local control. So then it gets kicked to the school committee. So in my thinking, this allows us plenty of time. We're into the 60% already verified. And so our nurses can verify the rest of it. And then John can submit the 2 forms that he already has filled out. And then this gives us time to really work with this, make sure it continues to be a safe date, it continues to be a good response for our schools, and kind of continue to go from there. And then continue to look at our other schools as well, because I do think, we have a lot of interest in our community. But I do want to make it really clear, we could, in theory, find ourselves in a situation in this town where, Brown can unmask and Glover can't. And so
that was the point I wanted to make.
At least until DESE changes their mandate, that is out of our control. And so, hopefully we don't find ourselves in the weeds like that, but I just need that out there.
And I think we have to make clear to the community, we are not in a position that if God forbid that happens, if you are a family that feels very strong, you want to unmask, and you happen to be at, say, school A who doesn't have that waiver, we cannot entertain requests to then move mid-year to school B for who has the waiver. That's just not in the capacity of what we have. So I want to preempt that right here and now. That can't happen. It's not going to be an option on the table. Correct, John?
I very much appreciate you putting that out in the public sphere.
Okay, because that's going to be a hard pill for people to swallow. And I particularly think that's could be an issue at the elementary school. The only other thing I'm a little concerned about, because I don't think any of us saw the idea coming that people might hold back that vaccination card to keep masks on, where we're still very much new or mid in the vaccinations for that 5 to 11. Part of me is slightly concerned that if people went to that level, we may then have people say, I'm not going to vaccinate then, which is would be a huge problem.
Megan or David? I don't know.
Go ahead, Megan.
Just on that point, I think
So that's
I do think that we're kind of, making some bold assumptions here because we don't know why some people haven't submitted their vaccination card. There's a whole host of possibilities there. But that said, that aside, I do think we need to, we've done this whole time is we've made decisions based on the data available to us. And we need to be looking at what our next step is. You've used the term off-ramp. That's what this is. Our data in Marblehead as a community is very, very strong, right? Very highly vaccinated, very low positivity rates. Now our younger students can get vaccinated as well. So I think this is the natural next step. If that January date is the date we all can get behind, staff and community, then I absolutely think we should look to move forward on that. But the other thing, two other things. One is you've mentioned parameters, and I think we've talked about this before around having that threshold. So what would it be that would not only that number that would kick us back to mask, but then what does that look like? What's the time frame around that? It's just so we're all 100% clear. And the other point, just to be clear, this is just removing the mandate piece of masking. So my understanding is that the guidance is still to encourage and recommend that masks continue to be worn, especially by someone who's unvaccinated, right? So we're not saying no masks in the school. Of course, if your student still wants to wear a mask, absolutely, they should continue to do that and feel comfortable doing so.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
John, do you think it's reasonable for us to have those parameters to us by our second meeting in December? Just because I want the public to know what they're dealing with, in that there's sometimes a sense that we're making false promises where I don't necessarily think we are. I don't think we have where any of this is concerned. I just think that there's so many intricacies to this that if we can put that out there so people know clearly, it could be school by school, that could mean one is and one isn't. And also the on-ramp would be XYZ, so that if that happens, people see it coming and it's not a surprise.
David, did you want to say something?
I did. Thank you. So I thought the objective tonight was to vote the amended policy that we have in our packets. And the amended face covering policy states that if a school building demonstrates a vaccination rate of 80% or more, and all the students and staff in a school, to Emily's point, could extend to any school now through an attestation submitted to the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, then vaccinated individuals in that school would no longer be subject to the state mask requirements. I wasn't aware that we were going to be putting any time stamps on it, because I want to vote the policy, because then I think the policy frees up the superintendent to do what we need to do. And this is the second or third reading on the policy. And I'm not a pandemic professional. I don't really know if January 18th is the best date. I don't know if it's too late. We're already at maybe, I don't know how long it takes Desi to review our request, and who's to say, the directions things are going in. Maybe we could unmask before schools, and then maybe you take a precaution that, okay, we have come back from the holidays, and, you wait a commensurate period that is, sometimes now it's 7 or 10 days, doesn't necessarily need to be 14 or 18 days, but I thought we were just voting on the policy and not a specific date.
I think David's absolutely right. And we should vote the policy and then leave it, then it becomes an operational issue. And if, John wants to recommend a different date after he meets with his leadership team, then so be it. So I'm going to make a motion to pass this policy. Do I have to state the actual policy name?
Yes.
I will.
Do you want to say it for me? I'm sure you've got it prepared.
So I'm going to include all of these policies in with the one. So can I get a motion to accept the changes to policies EBCFA, face coverings, IJNDD, social networking policy for staff, and IJOC, school volunteers policy?
So moved.
Megan moved.
Second.
Emily second. Okay.
Discussion.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Further discussion. So I just wanted to add on to that, Sarah. I mean, I think January 18th is, if you look at the calendar with all that's going on, right? We have the Thanksgiving holiday, then we come back, and then we have a Christmas holiday, and we're all going to be away. It's going to pass by quickly, and it seems like it probably could extend out to that. So I'm not necessarily, against that, but I think for purposes of just our goal has been to get the policy and then follow up on some of the things that were discussed tonight by the committee, report back, at what level would we return to masking? What kind of guidance? Maybe there'll be some input from the Board of Health on that as well, on how we would look at that. And then, bring everything together and in consideration for also how long it takes DESE to review the request, given that there might be a lot more schools piling up the further along we get. So I just wanted to clarify that.
No, I absolutely appreciate that, David. And you're completely right, you and Megan. As I thought this through this week, this seemed to make sense as sort of a directive and a kind of a hope. But if Dr. Bucky sees it differently, that's perfectly fine by me. I trust your thoughts on this and the work that you'll do with your administration. Meg?
The only two little word change I would make to the policy, though. So what did I go? Did you lose me? Okay. Oh, okay. And I'm happy to, vote it, and then you can make this change. But it says 80% of more of all students and staff in the school through an attestation form submitted. We really need to include their submitted and approved by, because we can't actually remove the mandate until it's been approved. So not to be totally OTT on it, but.
Rats, I've read that over so many times. Do you want to make them amend the motion?
Through the chair.
Yes, please.
I do think that we should separate out the mask policy, particularly if we're going to start making friendly amendments to it, because right now we have 3 policies that we're in, because this is such a focal point. I met with a very thoughtful group of parents today who are looking for date specific. And I said that we would be talking about this, and I certainly appreciate David's point that it could be earlier. DESE does say that they take 3 to 5 business days to get an answer back. I would be stunned if we weren't immediately approved by the things that Megan talked about. We have a high vaccination rate in our community. We have a very low incidence of that. Hopkinton, I've been in contact with them. They are going back to mandatory masking on Monday because they want to get through the Thanksgiving holiday. They're probably going to do the same thing. But I do appreciate the flexibility that the committee is giving me. I think the Veterans Day, because the group that I talked to today, I said, yeah, I would be surprised if you don't hear this story tonight. And since they didn't hear this story, I'm going to tell it. That throughout the pandemic, we've been protecting our older, more vulnerable populations. And we had the high school chorus there singing, and all of our high school students were masked, and the majority of the veterans that were in the audience were unmasked. And it was so startling to many people, that image that the children are still masked, and the people throughout the pandemic that we have said that we are trying to protect were there unmasked. And I don't make a judgment on mask or unmask, but I do think there is the sentiment in the community, where is the off-ramp? And DESE is providing me that. And so the committee's support in giving me the flexibility to put in the attestation, and if that gets approved, to come back to the committee with the thinking of the leadership team, our school nurses, the superintendent's leadership team, the health advisory group, to say maybe sooner than the January 18th date, or the January 18th date seems good. But I think that we've made really good progress here tonight, and I'm glad that we're going to amend this policy.
Okay, so if we vote down the current motion, then we can make a new motion. That might be our easiest way forward. So I will call.
Can we not just vote it and just make that little change? Can we not just say, like, I'm approving it with knowing that you're going to make that change. Like, I feel like we've done that with minutes before. Like, we vote the minutes, just knowing that you're going to make the change.
Policies, I think, are different.
Yeah. I
She
agree.
can amend anybody can amend her policy to only include the other two. And you vote the amended policy, the amended motion first, and if it passes, the primary motion dies. So that's the quickest way through this.
Okay. So Megan, it sounds like you're making an amendment to add approved by,
Jesse.
submitted and approved,
Yes.
submitted to and approved by Massachusetts Department of Elementary.
Yes.
Can I get a second on that amendment?
Anyone?
Nope. no
Second.
Thank you.
So we're voting the amendment that is going to approve that little word change in policy EBCFA and also approve IJNDD and IJOC. Okay? Is everyone clear? All right, Sarah Gold, yes. Sarah Fox,
Yes.
Megan Taylor,
Yes.
David Harris,
Yes.
and Emily Barron.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, John, for the continued work on that and, you know, kind of always being willing to listen to us and walk through this stuff. None of these decisions are easy, and no one on this committee takes any of the COVID precautions lightly, and we certainly are all fully committed to in-person learning. And so, you know, I'm happy that we're looking at this next step and you know, cautious at the same time.
John, can you just, as soon as reasonably possible, get us in the community those parameters in which things would shift? Because I just want to make sure people have information as soon as possible so that no one feels like we're moving goalposts or whatnot. If that, because the holidays may present some bumps in our numbers.
I have a superintendent's leadership meeting on Tuesday, so I will put this on the agenda for that group to discuss.
All right. That moves us to our final agenda item for the, well, under our updates, subcommittee and liaison updates. Anybody have any? Oh, Sarah, sorry.
That's okay. John had given kind of a highlights reel of what's going on in facilities, so I won't, you know, go over that too much. One of the pieces is we talked about, it's no mystery to anybody that the high school roof is in desperate need of repair, and we found out there's portions, we knew that there's portions of vets that were in need of repair, but it's, you know, it's a little bit worse than we thought. So one of the pieces we've done is to be really thoughtful in our approach to this, especially where one of our boilers went recently at the high school. We have multiple boilers, so we still have full capacity. We just rotate them so that nothing burns out and everything gets a rest. So taking one off that kind of presents some larger issues, but not to get into the weeds. So where we have all these multiple pieces to look at, we just really wanted to be thoughtful that when we're doing work on the roof, and we know we have HVAC updates, which are on the roof, that we're doing all those pieces. So one of the steps we took is we're setting up a meeting with Joe Koala to see, I mean, our high school roof is a lot of real estate. What interest there may be in potential of solar panels on that roof as well, because while we're doing all that work, if that's something they want to look at, that might be an option. And there also was a program at one point, I don't think it was a Marblehead Light, I think it was an outside company that was looking at solar panels, that if we were chosen, they would replace our roof. So we're definitely trying to dig up that contact information and see what we can do there. I wouldn't hold your breath on it, but we're looking at every angle possible. So I just wanted to give kind of everybody an update on that. Megan, it looks like he has a question.
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to interrupt if you still have more to say. I just don't.
Oh, okay. And so Elaine Leahy, who is the head of the Sustainable Marblehead Education Working Group, had sat in on our meeting and was very happy to hear that, and said that Sustainable would be happy to do anything they could in the way of support. or just at fact finding and things like that. They're always a very supportive partner in all of this. Megan?
Thanks, Sarah.
When is the, Sarah, I know the facilities committee normally submits the capital request to the town. So when is that deadline?
So I don't know that we have an exact date yet. There's been a discussion. Jason had sent out some information to John and Michelle, I think, trying to outline general time period, but to my knowledge, there's been no specific date put out there. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but I think he had said too, he realized the school may need some more time with that than other departments.
Through the chair, Jason has indicated the 2 dates in January. I don't have them off the top of my head, but I think those are fixed in terms of the capital requests and that. I think the flexibility piece is for our operating budget and for that piece.
So I just want to make sure that we, that capital request comes to the committee in enough time that we have time to really review it and offer feedback before it goes to the town. So if we can just kind of get that date when you can present, that would be useful.
Okay, and I think that date is tied to when the warrant closes, because those numbers need to be a little bit more solidified before the warrant closes.
David?
Right. So a couple different clarifications, and over the past few years, we have the equipment article and the facilities article, and there's a certain amount of money every year. And, we go back and forth and work collectively between the town to figure out who gets a pickup truck and who gets a school bus, and, who gets new doors put in at the high school, and with the money that we have. But we are clearly talking about reserving an article for, a capital override, one time. Potentially it could be just a one time, or it could be, a debt exclusion override, that depending on the dollar value. So what we can do is we just need to get that reserved on the warrant, and then the money that gets tied to that article could flow through into February and March. And, the final warrant hearing is held by the FinCom. And, even if in March we didn't have an exact number, it could be recommendation to be made at town meeting, but hopefully, it gives us time. And I think it's a good point, Sarah, that you made. We just want to consider this, that to just get the article on the warrant and reserve a place for it. Yeah.
And just to speak to that further, and I talked at our facilities meeting at this, and I had also spoken to Jason at one point, just to make sure the mechanism was, as I understood it, and it was, where we will have we'll have money left over from the building project. There is a mechanism through town meeting, and I want to be very clear. It would have to happen via vote by town meeting. This has nothing to do with the building committee voting. It's completely 100% town meeting. That money that was bonded for school, for the new school, could be, because it's already been bonded, through a vote of town meeting, slid towards another school project. Therefore, to take some of the bite off of the roof, if you will. At the end of the day, I think Blair Nelson said this yesterday at when we talked about, I from what I heard at the meeting, it doesn't really, the mechanism in which we fund it doesn't really make a difference per se, in that whether we take that to slice some off the top or we have another override on top of it. At the end of the day, this is not going to come out of an operating budget. It's going to be from that. So just as far as placeholders go, will we flesh out what financially is best? We might at some point need that as a placeholder too.
Yeah, I think this just highlights the importance of that facilities piece for us this year, and probably moving forward, generally speaking. But, I think much like our operating budget, like we can only bite off so much at this point. So we want to be cognizant of that. I think, running everything through the facility subcommittee meeting or subcommittee is obviously incredibly important. And then bringing it here for a full discussion is going to be really important as well. So.
Well, I think that's a really good point, Sarah, because there may be an ask coming out of the operating budget too, right? So we need to do this in concert with each other, which is why it all needs to come through this full committee. And I'm, especially given the, kind of accelerated timeline that we're looking at for the operating budget, I'm assuming we're gonna, have to at least have a placeholder number, an order of magnitude number for the capital piece too. So like I just want to get it all out in front of this committee as soon as possible, because we have to work in concert, and then also we have to work with the community. So, that's why I'm asking for, if we can just set a date that we're going to have a presentation on that, knowing that we're also getting the operating budget presentations in early December.
Yeah. And spoiler alert, I think we all know this. There is absolutely positively going to have to be an ask for a capital override. I mean, there's no way to fund this roof otherwise. With COVID costs, the cost of it has more than doubled. It kind of speaks to pay now or pay later. So that it's on the table. It's just when we get the final number, and Todd is working on that. Even getting numbers right now from people is kind of hard, but Todd's he's gotten one quote and he's working on kind of getting some comparables as well.
So you're saying that facilities assessment that we've all got, that number is probably significantly more.
Yes, way more. And so Michelle, one of the things that came out of our last meeting was Michelle was going to touch base with them, because that came out right pre COVID. And since then, what we've seen in construction costs has jumped extremely significantly, and asking the company that did that if they can give us a fair number, like that each thing may have jumped 30%, or what the industry standard is, so that we can adjust those numbers, because the roof alone more than doubled just in that year's time.
Okay, great. Good to know. Policy is going to meet on, I believe it's Tuesday, the 30th. So we'll probably have other changes to policies after that. Anybody else? Budget? I know you guys are meeting.
I think John's done the budget update and the sustainability update, so I'm good.
Sarah?
Safety. We had our first safety meeting in years and years and years. Which is excellent. I thought it was really productive. John came up with a really nice plan of things that we were going to attack for the year, and kind of check off. And we have a good plan for that. But it was really nice to see that group together, and it was a good discussion that was had. And then the SAC for the new Brown School met for the first time. Again, another productive meeting. We went over our school improvement plan and how elements of that may have been tweaked with the move. There were some questions about some operational things about programs like Lexia, and if we're still using them, or if parents still wanted to have access to them in the evening or after school hours if they could. But it was a very good meeting.
Great. And I'm realizing that I did not put on an update on the programs that John, Nan, and I attended when we went to the MASC-MASS conference. So I'll add that for our next meeting and just kind of give everyone a little overview of some of the things that we learned while we were there. All right. I will move us into our final segment. Closing business, any new business?
I did. I had one new business item. I think everybody on the committee was in receipt of an email from a Baldwin Road resident concerning a power line that was torn down during a delivery to the school. And I just wanted to reassure the committee that the appropriate actions were already in motion, but they've been accelerated a little bit. This neighbor has been extremely cooperative, been a very good neighbor throughout the process, was very good when the power was taken out and put back up. And, everybody's working to take the appropriate steps to bring it to to appropriate conclusion and make sure that the homeowner has the information that they need to make that happen. So I just wanted to follow up on that.
Great. Thanks for that update, David.
And then,
Sarah?
calendar, typically we vote the calendar sometime in January, sometimes it gets pushed to February. Last year, we had talked about having a committee of a cross-section of the community involving, you know, parents, clergy, staff, and so I believe some committee members meet prior to that discussion. So as we approach that, I just want to make sure that that's happening and that we don't run into again where all of a sudden we're voting something that the community really hasn't had a chance to have a discussion about.
I have drafted a calendar that I'm planning to share with MEA that looks like that. If the committee wants me to form a calendar committee, I can do that. I had put together a draft and was going to work with MEA on that.
I think we push forward. We can talk a little bit offline on what makes sense. Some years we buy ourselves a little bit more time than others. So I think long-term, that is a good idea. I just am cognizant of how many things we've got sort of going on for everybody at this point. So
I could make it part of the superintendent's coffee for the December date, that if people have calendar suggestions or priorities or concerns.
Okay. Sounds good. We did have one piece of correspondence. It was an email that everyone received from Emily DeWitt. So it's been added into the record. And that was in our Dropbox just to highlight it as well. Just talking about a few things, I think it's masking and everything. So, but we all were in receipt of that. So all had that information already. That will be entered into the record as well. All right, that's the end of our meeting. So I will adjourn us at 9:04. Thank you, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving to everyone.